Again, good afternoon, everyone. I'm so excited that you were able to take some time out of your schedule to join us for our final Lunch and Learn for the year. As many of you know, we have been using our Lunch and Learns to focus on each of the 4 components of the Race to Equity report that we partnered with Kids Forward to unveil last year at our 7th annual Racial Justice Conference. Again, to anyone who's in the meeting who was able to attend our conference this year, thank you so much for joining us. The work wouldn't be possible for the conference without participants like you, so we are very grateful. So this afternoon, I'm really excited to be joined by Veronica Hereford. Veronica is currently a program leader for Dane County as a certified social worker with a bachelor's in human services and psychology and a master's in public administration. As a lifelong learner, Veronica is currently earning her doula and Lamaze educator certifications and working to obtain the certification as a midwife. She's the owner of an amazing journey, Birthing and Family Services, and serves Dane and Rock County families. She's committed to healthy and supported pregnancies and birthing experience for Black women and babies. So Veronica, I am going to mute myself. I'm going to yield the floor to you. So excited to hear more about your work with ECCHO and how that has the potential to impact Rock County with respect to wellness.
All right, happy Thursday, everyone. I just want to take a minute to thank Amy and the YWCA for giving me this venue to present the work that we are currently doing in Rock County and what we're gearing up to do in Rock County. And just in addition to the bio, I am actually a lifelong learner. I think I've taken that like to a whole different level. I'm now back in school to complete my master's in social work with the goal of getting a clinical license because I do believe that that is a part that we often miss, is the emotional toll that we take on as women in this country, well, globally, honestly, and how that impacts birth and our health outcomes as well. So thank you again. I really appreciate you all taking time out of your day to join us here to have very important discussions about wellness and how we as citizens here in this country and in the county, in Rock County, can go about making necessary changes and how we can all work together to see those kind of happen. So to kind of kick things off, I want to start off with a little story. There's a little girl, you know, it's around holiday times, very timely, and she goes in the kitchen and her mom is getting ready to cook a ham. So the mom goes and she chops off both ends of the ham and she puts it in a pot and she's starting to cook the ham. So the little girl asks mom, well, mom, why do you do that? And she was like, well, I do it because my mom did it. And so then the little girl, being very intrigued, and, you know, it's family, all the family is over, she goes to ask, you know, her grandmother, well, grandma, well, mom says she got this practice from you. You know, why did you do it? And she was like, you know, I don't know, because my mom did it. And so then, you know, her great grandma just happens to be in the house. And she asked great grandma, like, you know, well, grandma, you know, my mom, my grandma, everybody says they got this from you. And her great grandma tells her, oh, baby, I did that because I didn't have a pot big enough to cook the ham in. And I think that as systems, we find ourselves in a very similar situation. You know, we do things simply because that's the way they've always been done. And, you know, I think we find ourselves in a position today as we are learning to live with COVID in a very unique position. You know, we have all been forced in these last 2 years to do things extremely different outside of any way we ever thought that they would be possible to have been done prior to this. And we are now forced with, do we continue to cut the ends off the ham, or do we just say, we just need to just redo the whole kitchen, get new pots, get new pans, and just really re-examine how we do things moving forward. And that is kind of where ECHO fits in. So ECHO, which stands for Engaging Communities to Change Health Outcomes, is a project that was that was designed by the the Wisconsin Alliance for Women's Health. They do a tremendous amount of work around policies. Some of you may be also familiar with the PATCH program, which is a project that is something that is a part of the Women's Alliance, the Wisconsin Alliance for Women's Health. I'm sorry, for some reason I have that stuck in my head. So all of these are projects that look to get the community involved in changing health outcomes. How do we as citizens become empowered to take over our health outcomes? How do we get our voice in these bigger conversations? A huge part of the work that is done by the Wisconsin Alliance for Women's Health deals with policy. And while policy is very important, we as citizens also have a responsibility, but we are also holding power that we often do not exercise. So ECHO is a project that will be going live in January of 2023. And we are looking to recruit 10 women from diverse backgrounds to really take a look at the needs of Rock County specifically. And then how do we as community members build a community service project that will impact the lives of others in our community? How do we sit back and really think about what can we do as community members, as neighbors, as family members, as people who are personally invested in the well-being of the people who we surround ourselves with in our community. So we are now in the recruitment phase of the project and looking to really instill a sense of civic engagement. And so I actually pulled up a quote from Thomas Ehrlich, who is the author of Civic Responsibility and Higher Education. And this is what he offers for civic engagement. Civic engagement means working to make a difference in the civic life of our communities and developing the combination of knowledge, skills, values, and motivation to make the difference. It means promoting the quality of life in a community through both political and non-political processes. A morally and civilly responsible individual recognizes himself or herself as a member of a larger social fabric, and therefore considers social problems to be at least partly his or her own. Such an individual is willing to see the moral and civic dimensions of issues, to make and justly informed moral and civic judgments, and to take action when appropriate. And this is what we are looking to do with our ECHO program. We are looking to build a sense of civic engagement. We are looking to have people who are often not involved in the conversations that truly impact their lives. We are looking to bring them in, provide them training and support, and to help them to develop the skills to build a community service project which we will then help them to create community allies. We will help them to find resources. We will help them to figure out ways for it to be sustainable beyond September of 2023, when the current cohort will conclude. ECHO is groundbreaking, especially in the Rock County area. It is, I'm not aware of another effort like this that is currently going on. And we are still, like I said, we're still recruiting. We're still looking to bring more people into the conversation. So, and not just professionals, because professionals are often sitting at tables having these conversations. We are looking to bring just a wide representation. So if you know women who you think would want to be interested in being a part of the conversation, please encourage them to get an application in. And thank you, Amy. She dropped the information into the chat. Encourage them and to kind of put a little bit of emphasis to how we feel like this work is extremely important. This is a paid opportunity. We are going to be offering $20 an hour for up to 15 hours a month towards the cohort members continuing the work. We will have every other week meetings and a 5-hour training in January. And we will continue to build the skills. We will continue to support, and then they will also have the opportunity to do work outside of that time to continue to build the network out, to make sure that when we are done come September of 2023, that we have hit as many members in our community to bring them on board with the initiative, to expose them to civic engagement, to start to hopefully bring a ripple effect of empowerment to community members, where their health and their wellness kind of comes into play. Because I don't think a lot of our community members, especially community members of color, are aware that, you know, they have the ability to advocate for themselves, that they can be empowered around issues of their health and wellness. As we look at, you know, I had a conversation with Sarah Finger, who is the executive director, around why she chose Rock County. You know, out of all of the counties in Wisconsin, you know, why was Rock County chosen as a site? And so, and she shared with me that Rock County was chosen as a site because we are seen as one of the least healthiest counties in the state. And that Rock County has been ranked 61st in health outcomes out of the 72 total counties in the state. And they also noted that Rock County has 70% voter turnout. And voter turnout definitely impacts, you know, the decisions that are made. And, you know, in my work with Dane County Department of Public Health, you know, we get so stuck on numbers that we often have to remind ourselves that numbers in our work represent people. You know, they represent like children and mothers and fathers and families. So when we start talking about, you know, the disparities, those disparities represent real people. They represent lives that sometimes are lost, that may have been avoidable losses, that had there been programs where we are empowered to put our voices in these conversations, you know, maybe some of these health outcomes, some of these disparities could have been very different. And that is what ECHO is desiring to do in Rock County. ECHO is, we're trying to be that springboard for these conversations. We're trying to be the training ground for people to go out and pass the information on, and Amy and I had a conversation, and I am happy to tell you that, yes, there will be a second cohort next year. So it's going to be like the start of the work, and then we're going to look at continuing the work next year, hopefully with lessons learned, and we will be able to do it in a far more effective manner, and that we can continue to work and do even greater. Because I'm looking for like great things to come out of this current cohort when it begins, but there's always room for, and so we will take lessons learned into our second cohort and hopefully just continue to spread the word, spread the message. And we look at partnering with as many people in our community throughout our county as we possibly can, because this work is impacting all of us. It may be geared towards women of color, but it doesn't just stay there. When you make a change for one person or one community, it's impossible not to change the trajectory for everyone. And
So Veronica, I have so many questions, but I don't want to hog the conversation. So as always, for anyone who is participating in our events, if you want to jump in with questions or comments or reflections, please just go ahead and put a question mark in the chat, and then I'll know to call on you. I'll see if I can get a couple in while people are thinking of their questions. I'm so excited that there's going to be a second round of a cohort. And so my initial questions are, how many women, like what is the capacity of the cohort as far as numbers? And maybe you haven't decided this or not, is there the opportunity for someone from the first cohort to continue in the second one? Or is it intentional that you'll have a different group of individuals for that second cohort?
So my current understanding of the second cohort is that we will be looking at 10 new members. So we try to cap the cohort at 10.
Okay.
We will continue with a minimum of 5, but we are looking to bring in 10 women from across the county and from varying life circumstances, because the more diverse the people are who are in the discussions, then the richer and more far-reaching the results will be. Like what we come up with will be something that will have a greater impact.
Right. I love that you brought up, and I'm paraphrasing, that you all are intentional about, and correct me if I'm wrong, finding women who don't necessarily traditionally hold power or seen as traditional holders of power to be a part of the cohort. So I love that that intentionality is there. The question that jumped in my mind for me was, how do you convince people that they have power? Because I would think that that's the first step in order to get them to engage and say, yeah, I want to be a part of this cohort to make change in my county. So what conversations have you all at ECHO had around convincing people that they have power?
And these are those conversations that often happen one-on-one. Those are the conversations where they wound up being very deep discussions, and often just wind up being, give it a chance. Because when you have lived in a society that has systemically stripped what's viewed as power away from you, it's hard to trust that this will be any different. Which, to be honest with you, I'm glad that there is we are compensating people for their time, for their emotional labor. So that in and of itself shifts the discussion, because there are very few tables many of us sit at where we're not being compensated for our time. So to expect people to kind of show up and provide us this very rich, but often very vulnerable part and very personal part of themselves, like to expect them to show up and do it voluntarily seems very disingenuous. To say that what you're providing is so valuable, but it's not valuable enough for us to compensate you for at least your time. So that in and of itself starts the conversation off different from my view.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And I love that you identified emotional labor, um, which engaging in social and racial justice work, there's no way to avoid investing emotional labor in that. So I love that you are cognizant of that and lifting that up. So I'm just going to keep asking questions till people put question marks in the chat. Can you share with us, like, what are the origins of, and I know that this is being piloted in Dane, Rock, and Milwaukee counties. What are the origins of this is something that we need to do in these communities? Where did that come from?
This came from, it's come from like years of policy work. Years of policy work, and realizing that while policy work has its place, if you look at every big movement that has come in most spaces, it was grassroots efforts that got it kicked off. It was community members standing up and saying something has to be different. If we wait for policymakers, how many more lives will be lost while we wait for, the policymakers in every place they sit to realize that people are dying waiting for policy to change. So we have to empower communities to push. They need to push with their voices. They need to push with their ballot. They need to push in any way that they can possibly push, because it may not be your life today, but it may be your life tomorrow. So if we make the necessary changes, if we start these conversations, if we empower people to bring their voices into conversations, even when they may not be invited sometimes, that then you start to shift. You start to shift the pendulum. And even if it's a little shift, it's a shift that needs to happen.
Absolutely. So I'm going to pause and do a plug, and I just dropped in the chat, but it is related. Our Courageous Conversations for November, I'm really excited about. And as I was doing the work to pull videos, because that's typically how we frame our discussions, our topic is organizing for liberation. And just like the importance of words and naming things. So one of the things that I'm learning while finding videos that are going to be appropriate for that discussion is that grassroots organizing is different from advocacy. And I guess I didn't really realize the nuance of that. And the way it was explained, that grassroots organizing must include the people that are most impacted, whereas advocacy may or may not include. So the thing that made me think of is Legal Action of Wisconsin was doing some work around evictions and petitioning the state Supreme Court to have, it's my understanding that evictions stay on your record for 20 years currently. They wanted that reduced to 1 year. So they were petitioning the state Supreme Court and getting other organizations to buy in to support this. I thankfully have never been evicted, but I think that's a wonderful thing. So I could do advocacy work in that area. But for grassroots organizing, you have the people that are closest to the situation, to the pain, to the experience engaged in that work. So again, I love that you all are being intentional about that grassroots building in order to do these projects. And I know you're not psychic, and I know that part of the process is for those projects to organically come from the cohort. But if you had to project, what areas could you foresee those projects impacting?
You know, Amy, I truly I have no clue. Like I have a lot, so, you know, my current passion is around maternal and child health. So, because I really think it's a very important thing, but, you know, I'm going to try to keep myself out of it and truly and it's very difficult because, like I said, I've invested a lot of time, money, energy, and effort into trying to positively impact outcomes from my own sphere of influence. But I am purposefully trying to take a step back so that what the cohort comes up with, they own it. They don't feel as if it was yet one more thing forced upon them because they know that this is where my passion lies. So, you know, that's going to be a fine walk, but it's one that I'm truly looking forward to. One I'm super excited about, one that we're going to work with our cohort to try to exercise, you know, those things that society have pushed out of us, like our imaginations. You know, we have been told no, and we have been hit with reality and what is perceived as reality. You know, every big dream was, you know, probably something that someone kind of said it couldn't happen until it did happen, from someone not willing to give up on what they saw as possible. You know, you think about how many times Elon Musk was told that those were not definite no's until, you know, he kind of went out and did it. And, you know, now we have self-driving cars. Not saying they're probably 100% safe, but it's something that now is a possibility.
Right. So, the other end of that spectrum, is there anything, because I know ECHO is going to be providing training and support for the cohort to bring whatever their project is to fruition. Is there anything that's off limits?
No, I don't believe so, because honestly, you think about everything that needs to come together to be healthy. So there's probably nothing that doesn't impact our overall health. So that just opens a very wide door for whatever community service project that is come up with. Because you think about, you know, your example of evictions. You know, living out in the elements in Wisconsin probably doesn't lend to great health. So housing becomes a part of being healthy and being well. There are very few things that honestly don't impact health and wellness.
I am becoming increasingly more excited to find out what the project of the first cohort is going to be, because as you're saying that, absolutely, housing, a livable wage, education, civic engagement, there's so many things that contribute to our wellness and our health. I'm really excited to see what that project is. So when we think about the second cohort, which I believe you said is going to be a different set of individuals, do you foresee those two projects being linked? Or is there an intentional decision being made that those would be standalone projects?
I don't know, Amy. I'm not really sure. And I'm excited to kind of see what both cohorts kind of come up with. I think that going through the first cohort may make me even more excited for what we could possibly do in the second cohorts. And as I look at places where I screw up in the first cohort, you know, being able to then come back in the second cohort and do them differently. So yes, it's all super exciting.
Yeah, I love the kind of unlimited amount of possibilities for
Yes.
both the first and second cohorts and those projects. It would be great, just like an unsolicited suggestion, if members of the first cohort could kind of serve as mentors. If there was an interest to the second cohort, I think that that could add a beneficial layer to that planning process. Do you foresee what are the milestones? Because it's really a short period of time, from January to September. Are there things that are already built into the project, like we have to have initial ideas here? If it's something that requires outside funding or connections with policymakers or community members, et cetera, are there kind of milestones built into that 9-month timeline for the first cohort?
And so how it's laid out now, the model is broken into 4 phases. So we're going to work with phase 1 with crafting the collective vision of the future of our cohort. So, that will be phase 1. How do we come together, and when we see our community as healthy, what does that look like? So we'll get a vision from the cohort on what that looks like for them. And then phase 2 will be a need in the community will be identified. We'll come up with a need that we as a cohort can agree upon, we need to focus on in our vision of this ideal future community. And then phase 3, we'll give them a toolbox of resources that they can then use to build out their ideas of how we meet the need. And then phase 4 is we are then going to empower the cohort to develop and implement a local civic health project.
Okay, thank you for that. There's a question in the chat, which I'll read just in case everyone doesn't have their chat open. Will you be organizing the list of ideas that the cohort comes up with? If they are able to move forward with one project idea, will there be a way to recognize their other ideas for potential future projects? So just for clarification, Sam, are you saying for future projects for that cohort? Or let's say that the cohort comes up with 3 amazing ideas and they collectively decide to move forward with one. Will those ideas be shared? And Sam, jump in if I'm misrepresenting the spirit of your question. Let's say that there's another organization that says, oh, that is really valuable. Maybe we can pick that up and work on that. Sam, was my
Yes, you
representation?
explained it exactly what I was thinking. Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
And I think I think that's kind of one of the hopes of how this is all framed out, is that we will continue to communicate with our community partners. We will continue to encourage our cohort members to build out their network so that it won't be kind of oh, well, this is what we kind of came up with. We are going to hope that we bring people along with us on the journey so that if we identify that out of our top 3 choices, this is the one that we are choosing to move forward with, that, like you said, maybe there is another organization who sees this as valuable work, and given the amount of time, energy, effort, and labor that the cohort put into it, can see it as something that a fair amount of the community has seen as a need as well, and be willing to adopt in some way, shape, form, or fashion. Does that make sense, Sam?
Yes, thank you. I just think, if they came up with all these really great ideas, but they don't have the capacity to do all of it themselves, it'd be great to get, partners on board or other people that do have the capacity to help.
Yeah, and I would, so another unsolicited suggestion, I would love if maybe as a part of it, the cohort pitches that, like, we have a community night, right? And we have organizations at the table and the cohort says, hey, this is the idea we're going to run with. But we have these 3, 4, 5, however many other ideas that we really think have value. And so we want to know which of you potentially are interested or partnering together to bring these ideas to fruition. And because I would never want something to be done in a way where one organization is like co-opting the idea and, again, emotional labor of the cohort. And then obviously the cohort receiving credit for this idea was birthed out of this group. And then hopefully, ideally, from my perspective, if the other organization that's moving forward with the cohort's idea, maybe check in and say, hey, this is what we're thinking. Is that true to the spirit or the intention of your idea? And have kind of that collaboration there. I think that could be really powerful and a really great way for sustainability, especially since this is a county-wide effort. Again, I'll read it because I don't know who has their chat open.
And Amy, and then
Yeah.
Amy, and I think that one other like advantage to having a set group of members, that even if there is an organization who picks up they pick up an idea that's put out by the cohort, that then they increase the chance of potentially being able to bring on maybe a cohort member in some way, shape, form, or fashion who is very passionate about the idea. So then you bring along that person and their network to your organization, and you may actually be able to tap into a community that may have otherwise been something not easily accessible before.
No, really good point. So the chat is waking up, which makes me happy. Jean contributed, will the cohort represent only the BIPOC community? 3 things. 2, funding is coming from the state, ? And then 3, working with HealthNet for specific feedback. So any order you would like to respond to those?
So we are specifically targeting BIPOC women or people who identify as women. So that is very specific, because these are voices that are not normally involved in conversations. So we are looking to empower those communities, because what we have found is that even if, so let's just take, for instance, birth, because, you know, that's my jam right there. It's like birth in this country for women, period, is something that leaves a lot to be desired, like outcomes for birth. However, when you factor in, especially for Black and Indigenous women, those numbers become abysmal. So there, and then we look for intersectionality. We can't make changes in birth that only positively impact Indigenous and Black women. If we make changes in birth processes and in systems and how they approach birth, then everyone benefits from it, if that makes sense. So, and then the second part.
Yeah, is funding coming from the state? And then the final component of the question is there any collaboration currently with HealthNet of Rock County?
We are looking to collaborate with everybody. You know, it's Rock County, we are for everybody in Rock County being a part of this journey. So if, like, Amy has my contact info, definitely feel free, if you are from HealthNet, please feel free to reach out to me, because I am willing to have these conversations, you know, with anyone who is willing to hear them. And even in some places where people aren't willing to hear them, I'm still willing to have them.
So
and I'm not sure where funding comes from. Like, that is not part of my jam right there either, is like the funding. So I'm not sure where it came from, Jean.
And Veronica, I will make this recording. We're gonna post it on YWCA Rock County's YouTube channel, but I'll also send you a copy. So if it's easier to do like, and just like, hey, watch this video and then we can meet and talk. If that would be at all useful to you, I'm more than willing to send you the link for the video. Christine put, are others allowed to sit in on these meetings? Perhaps professionals that don't want to take a paid spot. I know we, okay. That there have been some discussions, Veronica, about you presenting at HERE, anyone who's not familiar, Health Equity Alliance of Rock County. So hopefully I didn't jumble that too much. So are others allowed? And Christine, feel free to unmute. Do you mean people who are non-BIPOC and identify as women?
Yeah, I think, you know, if there's other people like doing the work that, you know, are in the position of being able to be paid to collaborate with this group and just, you know, but don't want to take a spot from someone who's not traditionally in this role. I just am wondering if there's a way that, so that Veronica doesn't have to go and jump to all of these coalition meetings to bring everyone together. I just wonder if there's a way that like more people are able to sit in. But obviously I also want to recognize that if these people are sitting in, it might not, and they're not always there, that kind of, that may break up like the trust in the group as well. So just wondering thoughts on that.
So off the top of my head, I would probably lean more towards a no. Like it would be different if you're there as a speaker or someone presenting a specific topic that we need more information on. But just for the forming and the safety of the group, I would probably lean very hard at that's probably going to be a no. Just because it's like everyone in the room, even if you say nothing, you impact the discussion that goes on in the room. Because what I will tell you, being a woman of color, that I am mindful how I show up in spaces. So I am aware that I need to present a certain way when I am around a certain, when I'm around any population, I need to be mindful of how I show up. I will talk very differently with my friends than I will talk when I walk into a meeting. So it's like, and that's just something that a lot of people of color have, is code switching. You learn that you have to do it. We learn that we have to be mindful not to offend people when we come in spaces. And I wouldn't want to put that hindrance on our group process, because people will present very differently depending on who's in the room.
Right. And I think that's a very important point, and I appreciate you just leaning in and being transparent with that. Code switching is very real. There's thanks in the chat from Jackie. Heidi has a question. Will you bring in panels or mentors in any part of the program?
It will depend on what the cohort sees that is needed. I'm trying to let as much of this be organic and from the cohort as possible. Because what often happens is that we sit with our education and our degrees and we come up with what we think people need and we miss it totally. And we often will wreck a relationship super quickly because we thought we knew best and we actually cause harm. So I'm going to step back and that's something I've learned in my work with human services, is that people with a lot of degrees sit back and have a lot of conversations with everyone except for the people they're serving, and then harm is done.
Veronica, and maybe this hasn't been established yet, because again, you want it to come from the cohort and not be placed on the cohort, which I have so much respect for. But is there, like, how do you envision, if you've envisioned, the structure of meetings and how that will logistically work? Will the cohort kind of like select a lead to walk them through meetings? Will it be kind of like shared leadership, like this month I'm taking the lead on this, or this is my area of passion, so I want to step forward and offer guidance and my expertise? Has thought been given to that?
And I think we're gonna kind of see how so I hesitate with the lead. Like because when I come into it, I want to come into it from a facilitator position.
Okay.
And I think when you start, like, maybe people who would want to step up and take, because I want everyone to be a member, as opposed to having, because facilitating a meeting is very different than leading a meeting. So I want to take a step back and allow the cohort to be the cohort, and not for it to be a Veronica-led meeting, which is, it can be difficult, especially when there are things that you are so passionate about. And I want everyone to let their passions definitely impact and influence the work that's being done, without having to also be mindful of, I need to facilitate the meeting as well. Does that make sense?
No, it absolutely makes sense. And I like that you specified the difference between leading a meeting and facilitating a meeting. Yes. So, as I'm sure many, if not all of us in this meeting are thinking, we're not a part of the cohort, but we support the work of the cohort. And I think we're all really excited about what the project will be and how we can eventually support that. In the meantime, what can we do? And thank you for giving this specific request of get the word out. What can we do besides that to be helpful to the effort?
The most important part is just, stay tuned. Like, we will definitely keep our partners, updated on what we're doing, and try to bring you along as a part of the process. And if you know BIPOC or non-binary folk who are interested in the work, please, like, tell them to get their applications in.
And do they just email you their where can the application be found?
The application is at ECCHO, ECCHOWI.org. Wait. Hold on. Wait, I missed some words there. Hold on 1 second. Let me get my card.
Okay. And Carrie, thank you for dropping. I was attempting to maneuver the link for our YWCA Rock County YouTube channel. Appreciate that.
That's it. ECCHO, ECCHO. I was thinking email. It's ECCHOWI.org. And, I kind of caught the end part of something that was in the chat. Trust me, as someone who has spent a whole lot of money on education, I am by no means discounting education degrees and things of that nature. I just know from, I've been, with Dane County Human Services for 20 years. And I just know that when people who are perceived to be at a different station in life come in and start speaking, that people who feel as if they don't measure up stop speaking. So that's because then they're perceived as the expert. And even if it means that I'm giving you ownership of my experience, I'm going to, like, step back and view you as the expert, and that my opinion about my own experience doesn't really count, or is not as valuable as a person who has all of these degrees or titles, or they're in a perceived position of authority.
Right. And even sometimes that's the case, even without speaking, just someone showing up in the space and observing can completely change the vibe of the work that's happening with the cohort.
So it's and maybe we'll figure out a way for that to happen when we're established as a cohort and we're comfortable in the space that we're in. Maybe there's a safe way for some of that exchange to happen, but I would be remiss to say today that yes, it will happen. I can't say that for sure because one misstep can set you back, and we will spend the whole time trying to repair what has brought us to a place that is not going to be beneficial for the work or even the input that everyone is going to receive from the work that's done.
Absolutely. We have a few more minutes left before we shift to announcements and conclude our lunch and learn. So if you have a question, if you just want to share a comment or a reflection with Veronica, now is a really great time to do that. Veronica, if you don't mind sharing, would you mind putting your email in the chat as we promote this work in circles of influence that we're in and other meetings? I just left a meeting this morning. Most of them have announcement sections. I'll be at CJCC this afternoon. I will definitely do a brief announcement on the work of ECHO, but we really want to send people to you for information beyond the basics. Thank you for putting that in the chat. Other questions or comments? Or Veronica, is there anything that we haven't covered that you think it's really important for us to know or understand about ECHO?
That I consider everyone who took the time out their day to be a partner with us in the work, and that I definitely hope that you lean into what we are going to be sharing along our journey. And if there is a way that you feel like you can definitely support the work, I am so 100% open to having that conversation with you. Feel free to email me, and I'm willing to meet. I'm willing, to show up at a meeting. I'm willing to meet personally, any kind of way that we can make this happen, because, like I said, we talk about outcomes and numbers. We don't often talk about the experiences that means that real life people are having.
Right, absolutely. And thank you for offering to make yourself available for one-on-one meetings or for presentations. I think I can speak for everyone here that is much appreciated. One final question I think that I have, I know that you work with Khadijah, and she recently worked, in a different role at the state capitol, and the connection between the work of ECHO and policy. Is there something specific that we could do as far as outreach to our legislators who make policy for us, and hopefully with us in mind, definitely on a nonpartisan level? Is there a way that communicating with legislators about the work of ECHO that could be helpful?
I just think, reminding our elected officials all across the board that their constituents definitely, when empowered, want to be a part of the process. And that, we are why they sit where they are. So I think that is something that will, help people across the nation, is that reminding, our elected officials that they are, at the end of the day, that their loyalty should lie to their constituents. wants and the needs of their constituents.
I love that. I think that's a beautiful way to close out our discussion. I do have one more announcement. I'll note that our Courageous Conversations, the link is above for that. Actually, let me copy it in case anyone joined the meeting after I posted it the first time. Our Courageous Conversations will happen the Monday after Thanksgiving. So that's going to be Monday, November 28th. Those are virtual events. It'll take place from 5:30 to 7 with what we call the parking lot afterwards. The difference is 5:30 to 7 is recorded. The parking lot is unmoderated, unrecorded. Sometimes our conversations spill over and we want to offer a space for people to collaborate, for people to kind of unpack what we've covered. And again, our topic for November is going to be organizing for liberation, which I think is very in line with our lunch and learn discussion. Veronica, I just want to thank you again. I have really enjoyed walking through the Race to Equity report and looking at those 4 components. I think that the work that you are engaging in Rock County has the potential to be so powerful and is really important. And I appreciate you being generous with your time and explaining the project and kind of walking us through what partnership might look like. So I'm very grateful for that. Thank you. And then my final announcement is that YWCA Rock County is again taking the lead in organizing the Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. commemoration. We are leading the organization, but it is a robust list of partners that we are so proud to continue our partnership and work with. We are back in person this year, which is new. We have been virtual the last 2 years, just out of an abundance of caution for COVID, which we are still experiencing, but we do feel more comfortable with offering an in-person program this year. We are back at Blackhawk Technical College, but in a different part of the building. Those of us who have attended this event for years know that we were in the commons area, which is the basement, the back of the building. They have been doing a lot of remodeling, and we are going to be on the first floor of the building in a beautiful new space. The reason I point that out is because I understand that some people may have chosen not to attend in the past because of mobility issues and difficulty navigating to the space where the event was held. So just wanted to be very intentional about sharing our new location. And the other thing that has changed for this year is that we usually start at 3. We are starting at 2. Again, those of us who have attended this event for years, we have historically gotten horrible weather during MLK weekend, and has made it a challenge to navigate and traverse. So starting at 2 is again very intentional. We want people to get back on the roads and safely to their destinations before it gets dark. So we are so excited. We're hoping that you can join us for that in-person programming and join us virtually for our Courageous Conversations. We have a couple minutes left. We want to be respectful of everyone's time and begin and end at the stated times. But are there any final questions, comments, appreciations for Veronica before we wrap? All right, so hearing none.
I want to thank everyone for, taking the time out of your very busy days, just to be here to hear a little bit about what your fellow community members are going to be up to. I definitely and wholeheartedly appreciate each and every one of you.
Absolutely. And if there are messages that you need YWCA Rock County to help get out, of course, our mission remains to eliminate racism and to empower women. So any way we can partner in that. I'm just thinking of ideas, which I'm sure we'll talk more about, but especially for that cohort 2, YWCA Rock County partners with Elite Ladies of Beloit to host Juneteenth. We always hold a certain amount of space from our vendor population for nonprofits. So I'll just extend the invitation now to have ECCHO have a booth at Juneteenth. When you're thinking about providing information about how the first cohort is going, and then to recruit, it's the word I'm looking for the next cohort. And I don't have the date in front of me. I apologize. I should have done that. If you give me a second, I'll pull it up. That is going to be Saturday, June 17th, and we'll be at Telfer Park from noon until 10 p.m. Nonprofits are not expected to stay at their booth that entire time. Usually our vendors that are selling food and merchandise, they definitely stay, but our nonprofit vendors have an earlier cutoff. But again, it's a free available space to connect with community and get the word out about this important programming. So with that, we have reached our 1 o'clock cutoff. Thank you everyone for joining us. Really appreciate it. And we will work to get the recording up on our YouTube channel soon. All right. Take care, everyone.